Briar Rose, Chapter 17. The prince sang too, and as he added his voice to theirs, it was as if they all witnessed all their deaths in the thorns. It was as if they had knowledge of all their lives, past, present, and future. How can you have any future lives if they're dead? Syl had asked finally. It was a question the girls had puzzled over in the family room as they played with their dollhouse. Shanna had wondered first, and both the older girls had wanted Becca to ask, but she had refused. So Syl, being braver that year, had done what they had all wanted. How? Syl had asked again. Gemma looked over her half-glasses and said, "The future is when people talk about the past. So if the prince knows all their past lives and tell all the people who they are still to come, then the prince lives again and into the future." "Oh," said Syl, as if she understood, but she hadn't. She said that later when Gemma had finished the story and the girls were once again playing at dolls. "I didn't understand it all." "I didn't either," Shanna said, marching the mummy doll from the living room to the kitchen. "Didn't either," said Becca, even though she did. But she had long ago learned that it was best not to contradict her sisters. They just got mad. She put the baby doll into its cradle and went out of the room to the real kitchen, where Gemma was making a cake. "I understand," she said to Gemma. "You always understand," Gemma said, handing her the icing bowl to lick. Becca preferred licking the cake dough bowl, but it was already sitting in the sink with soapy water. "Always," Becca agreed, though she wondered if this were really true. Chapter 18. The plane was already an hour late, and Becca was long past trying to sleep. The pilot had twice promised they would make up the time once they were boarded in Milan, and once somewhere over the Italian border. He had not promised since. Becca unfastened her seatbelt and, careful not to disturb her seatmate, bent over to get her pocketbook from the floor. Unzipping it, she took out her passport and the envelope with the photos of Gemma. Then she pulled down the seat tray and spread the photos out, placing the open passport next to them. It was something she had done 100 times since having her picture taken. Though Gemma's photos were in black and white, grainy reminders of time passing, and hers was brilliant and wrong in its coloring, the two women could have been one. The same surprised eyes, the same strong mouth, the same broad forehead, the same heart-shaped face narrowing to a chin, the miss being pointed by a small cleft. No one had ever commented on how much they looked alike, she and Gemma, except of course for the red hair. But then no one had ever seen the pictures of Gemma as a young woman before. Still, the resemblance startled Becca anew. "How many more surprises, Gemma?" Becca whispered. The sound of her voice, even pitched so low, woke her seatmate, a chatty woman with Polish cousins. She started in on her bland reminiscences even before the sleep was fully cast from her eyes. Becca listened only half-heartedly. The woman tended to repeat herself endlessly. That was the third time she was telling this particular story. Putting away the photos, Becca kept the passport out a minute longer, opening and closing it. It was so fresh, so new. Soon it would have its fine first stamps. Polish stamps, border stamps, almost a violation, though welcome. Gemma, she remembered suddenly, had no passport, not in her bank box, not in the rose box. In fact, Gemma had often boasted how she was perfectly happy in America, and had no intention of ever crossing another border. Most probably, Becca thought she never had a passport. The woman at stores said the majority of the refugees were considered displaced persons who had gotten their visas through American consulates. Someone running desperately in a war, she said, rarely stops to find the proper papers. Becca thought about her grandmother, about the war she had been running from when she was close to Becca's age. Then she put the passport back in her pocketbook, zipping it closed with a sound that was both rude and funny. Smiling, she turned to her seatmate. "I've never been to Poland," she said, cutting into the woman's monologue. "Well, I have, my dear," the woman answered. "Third time, and my cousins. I've never actually been anywhere before." "Sort of a sleeping beauty, are you?" Becca started laughing and could not stop. The woman looked shocked, and after a moment rang the call button. A stewardess, fearing she had a hysteric on her hands, came running with a glass of cold water. Having nothing to declare with the blue jeans for Magna, not even a set of cousins, she thought to herself, but knew better than to make jokes with customs officers. Becca got through the long line with relatively little fuss. There was no size 12 student waiting for her, so she stopped for a moment to glance around. The airport was decidedly low-tech, not like an American airport at all. 3 young women in embroidered skirts and dirndls were the only spot of color. They were holding up a sign in English, "Welcome Aunt Anna and Uncle Stosh." She resisted the urge to copy-edit it. When no one tapped her on the shoulder, she perched on top of her suitcase and waited, lulled by the buzz of the voices. It occurred to her that if Magda, size 12, didn't show up, she might have some serious problems making herself understood. The Polish phrase book in her coat pocket notwithstanding, and within 5 minutes, a very long 5 minutes, a broad-faced, blonde young woman, much smaller than a size 12, stopped before her and asked, "Miss Berlin? Magda? I am so pleased to make your acquaintance." Magda held out a hand, whose grip turned out to be firm and familiar. "There was much cars today." "Traffic? Yes, traffic. I think my English will much improve for the next 3 weeks." Becca smiled. "Over." Magda looked puzzled. Over the next 3 weeks." Becca picked up her suitcase. "Maybe I can learn a little Polish, too." All things are possible. Magda's face was sunny and open, as if deceit were a foreign commodity. Her eyebrows worked independently of one another, which gave her the look of a slightly demented dove. Becca decided she liked that. "What do we do first?" "We must have changed money, and then we go to my aunt's apartment, where we will spend the night. It is too late to go off and without good plans. Tomorrow we get the automobile." "We would say car." "Yes, the car. And I will show you tonight some of Warsaw, if you are not too tired. It is a wonderful city for tourists that has much rebuilded since the war." During this little speech, Magda had carefully guided them to the kiosk where money was exchanged. "How much would you like to be changed?" Becca took out a packet of traveler's checks. "Would 200 do?" Magda grinned, and her right and left eyebrows did their little independent dances. "It will do very well, though you must also keep dollars ready. People like dollars very much. Do not say I told you this." She turned and spoke quickly in Polish to the woman behind the counter. The woman leaned forward and said in heavenly accented English, "Do not trouble, I am speaking your language. Sign the checks and I give you slots. It is forbidden to take slots out of the country. All must be spended here." "You see, many speak English here in Poland," Magda said expansively. "Perhaps you will have no need of me." "I will have much need of you," Becca said, "especially once we go out into the countryside." "Especially then," Magda agreed cheerfully. We left the airport and got a taxi. "Just give him dollars," Magda advised. "That is the way to make it very how do you say cheap?" An hour later, with Magda pointing out of the sights, "That is the river Vistula, and there is the old town. Perhaps we will look there. And that dome like an onion is St. John's, where the Jesuits, is that right? Jesuit? Yes, church." And they arrived at their destination. Becca gave the driver $1 bills, counting them out into his open hand, his round, ruddy face beaming with delight. Too much," Magda said loudly, but Becca kept up the count. Finally, Magda put her hand down when the driver's hand was at $7. "Enough," she said roughly to him, and he made a face back at her. They got out, and Becca was delighted to see that they were in a much older part of the city. "Auntie lives here." Magda pointed to a series of low buildings. "Can I pick her up a present of some kind?" Becca asked. "That is a custom in America. When you stay at someone's house, she would love a bottle of good Slavutz," Magda said. "There is a store over there." She pointed across the street. "It is too expensive for her that often." They bought the bottle with an awful lot of zlots and went on to the building that Magda had originally pointed to. Auntie lived on the 4th floor, up steep, uneven stairs. It took both of them carrying the suitcase to manage it. "Why did you bring such a heavy case?" Magda asked as they rounded the 3rd floor. "I am staying 3 weeks," Becca said, the stairs making her momentarily cranky, but she was suddenly embarrassed by all the clothing she had packed. An athletic duffel with fewer things would have made much more sense. Auntie proved to be a grayer and wider version of Magda, and as ebullient and welcoming. The Slitzwitz was a great hit, though Auntie Wanda insisted that they all have a drink to celebrate Becca's arrival. Not being much of a drinker, Becca choked on the strong liquor, much to the amusement of Magda and her aunt. Becca unpacked in the tiny room she was sharing with Magda, only to the extent of hanging up her skirts and one dress. She pulled out the blue jeans and brought them back into the room that served as a living room, dining room, kitchen, and, as she suspected, Auntie's bedroom as well. "These are for you," she said, handing them to Magda, "though I was told size 12, and they are probably much too large. You can't be more than a size 6. "Oh, they are much in appreciation," Magda said. "Appreciated," Becca corrected. "That too. I can sell them on the black market, and Auntie and I will have a wonderful holiday." She said it with no embarrassment whatsoever. She had raised me since my parents are gone. I cannot do enough for her. Becca nodded. "Now, if you are not too tired, I will show you my city." Magda's face was so pleased-looking, Becca could not resist. "I am not too tired," she said. "Besides, I will sleep very well tonight." "Very well indeed," Auntie Wanda put in. "My Magna does no snoring." Magda's city was a combination of very tall new skyscrapers, some were ruins, and a bustling old town along the royal route. Magda insisted they go all the way to the royal castle, now a treasury of art and relics. King Sigismund Vasa III looked down from his high column in the square. It was also European, so unlike America that Becca forgot how tired she was and managed to enjoy it all. Her favorite place, though, was the summer palace of the last Polish king. Sitting on an escarpment overlooking the Vistula with classic parks around it, the palace was just right for a fairy tale. I wonder, Becca said aloud, if my grandmother's palace was like this. Your grandmother had a palace, Magda asked. So she said, or at least she said she lived in a palace. I promised her I'd come back and find it. We will find it, Magda said, right eyebrow arching a bow over the left flattened momentarily. She held out her hand. Becca took her hand. We will, she said, and for the first time she believed it.